welcome to the SCI Guys, a show where we talk about the crazy, weird, and wonderful stories from the science world. I'm Corey, and as always, I'm joined by my co-hosts, Jamp and Luke Cutford, and this time, special guest, Rowan Ellis.
Yay!
Hey!
Hi, SCI Guys.
Hello,
Rowan.
This week, we're talking about homosexual Homo sapiens.
Oh, the gays.
Yeah, the gays.
Talking about the
That's
gays.
me.
That lot, yeah.
To put it bluntly, James.
To put it
yes.
bluntly, the gays.
James, the gay of the podcast,
I am the gays.
is talking about the gays. Yeah.
Yeah, I can call them the gays.
You can do what you want.
I am the gays.
That
All
is
of
I
them.
am all the
Every last one of them.
refer
We have
to
assimilated.
myself. Yeah.
I am all of the Jedi. Well, yeah, that's what we're talking about this week. We're talking about the
I am Iron
sci-
Man.
Oh no! Yeah, I am Iron Man. We are talking about the gays. We're talking about the science of homosexuality and the gay gene, which is something we've been struggling to find for quite some
The gay
time.
gene.
Yeah, the gay gene. Have we found it? Do we have it? We
I don't know. Last week you said you were going to find it by this week.
Yeah.
So have you found it?
Well, we'll
Need
see
to
by
get
the
on it.
end. I'll let you know.
Okay,
It's a
okay.
surprise.
It's a
That's
mystery.
the deal. Yeah.
What's in Corey's mystery box?
The gay gene.
The gay gene.
Wow. I'd love to receive
Schrodinger's
that
gene.
in my YouTube sponsored loot box.
What, the
Luke,
gay
great,
gene?
sorry.
Why would you? What
Yeah.
use do you have for the gay gene, Luke?
I don't know.
Gene.
I could probably patent it.
Imagine patenting the gay gene and making every single gay person have to pay you.
Oh,
That's a great
The gay
untapped
tax.
market. Yeah,
That is indeed how the gay gene works.
yeah. If you patent it, that's how it works.
Suddenly I don't
Yeah.
want the gay gene anymore. Pay for it. It's a subscription service.
All of the bigotry. No, that's fine. That's fine. But if I've got to pay for it, nah.
Nah.
No,
No.
no.
So, what is homosexuality? Do you guys know?
I have no idea. Please
Never
enlighten.
heard of it.
Are you talking about a scientific definition?
I mean, give me any definition.
When two people of the same gender love each other very
Well,
much.
this is what's so interesting, isn't it? Because what's so interesting is that that the actual word homosexuality implies homo being same, is it? And sex being biological sex, but that's not how we use the word anymore.
Yeah, but then they come from like ancient Greek, which we don't use at all anymore.
Sure, of course. I just mean that the direct translation of the word is no longer useful.
Yeah, well, and also I think homogenduality doesn't quite have the same ring to
I
it.
think it sounds a lot better.
But actually, technically, it would be homosexuality,
Homo.
because homo means man. Homo means
Mansexual.
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 which for some gay people that is true.
Is correct.
No,
yeah.
but
Exactly.
homo, the homo prefix actually means same, which is where you get homophone from. Whereas-
I mean, I have to admit on this science podcast that science is not my strong suit. The soft sciences.
Hang on. That's the same for James and I. I wouldn't worry.
You
You're
don't
in
have to
good
be a
company.
scientist to be on this
Like-
podcast.
Listen, I'm the fake sciences, the social sciences, the those
get
ones, which I
out.
guess technically count. You've
We
talked about psychology stuff here before. It's fine.
Yeah, we love the social
We've done
sciences
a bit
here.
of that, haven't we?
But I think, but I do think that like the definition of homosexuality has changed so much and has meant so many different things because it's always in conversation with the social norms and meanings. So it's although it is like there's probably a technical definition, I think it's also interesting from like a social definition. It's probably shifted quite a lot through the centuries.
I mean, absolutely. It's really shifted. And the thing is that the sort of initial definition of homosexuality really only applies to animals now, which is interesting. We can really only use it to apply to animals, and even then, it doesn't necessarily work exactly as well as we'd like it to. So from Britannica, the Encyclopedia Britannica, homosexuality, sexual interest in and attraction to members of one's own sex. The term gay is frequently used as a synonym for homosexual. Female homosexuality is often referred to as lesbianism. There you go.
Lesbianism.
Yeah, now lesbianism, that's a new word for you.
Ah.
Yeah. That's the thing that I think what's very interesting about the terms gay and lesbian is that gay is very broad, but lesbian is incredibly specific.
It is, yeah.
And none of the other groups have specificity in the person's gender. As in, bisexual, there's no term for bisexual men or bisexual women,
That's true.
and there's no real term for gay men. But
Yeah.
lesbianism is a term in its own right.
What do you think that is?
I think.
Where did that come
Well,
from?
do you know, look, I'm not. I don't actually know. Maybe if we had someone on the podcast that knew about the history of lesbianism. Maybe if we had someone that.
I mean, not the etymology of it, although I do think that it's one of those things where you often have a general term for all genders and a specific term for women, in that if you were to talk about policemen up until quite recently, and still now, people would probably just assume that that could be any gender, whereas if you said police woman, you would be specifically talking about a woman, just in generally socially, just not men not wanting to necessarily associate themselves with that term, that it's not seen as gender neutral, whereas men specific ones are. So I can see how when you start having the conversation about homosexuality, that might be where it kind of split off. Obviously you've got lesbos being the kind of a lesbian origin as a concept, but in terms of why there's not like a specifically female or male bisexual term is interesting. Although bisexuality from its very beginnings, in terms of when it was first talked about as like the phrase bisexuality, has been pretty inclusive of different genders that are outside of the binary. So I can also see how they wouldn't necessarily think to be like, oh yes, we shall make it one term for the men's and one term for the women's, in terms of their kind of language.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think the Lesbos route, was that not the island that Sappho lived on with a lot of women? I might be making that up. It was?
Yeah.
So that's where the term sapphic comes from. It's a sort of Greek, an ancient Greek, I think it was an actual person, an ancient Greek woman that lived on an island with lots of ladies, and people sometimes try and say that she wasn't a lesbian when she very much was.
Oh, it's obvious.
Yeah, so I mean, when you live on a big Greek island with a lot of ladies, I feel like there's only one eventuality there. So moving on from sort of definition of homosexuality, why don't we talk about homosexuality in animals? So
what was I going to say? In theory.
In theory.
Hypothetical.
Well, we're not going to practice homosexuality here. That would
No.
not.
Keep it theoretical. Please.
Keep it clean.
Well, yeah. You guys are lucky that the camera isn't pointing at me and James right now. Otherwise, oh boy,
Ooh.
it's very steamy in here. So we started studying animal homosexuality, well, I mean, a long, long time ago. So we've got observations that were published back in the 1700s. And then over 200 years later, I say over 200 years later, in about 1910, which is over 200 years later, actually, if you do the maths. And even if you don't do the maths, that's the great thing about maths. It's still 200 years later.
Stop.
It only becomes 200 years later once you do the math.
It's not Schrodinger's cat. That's not how it works.
Once you observe it, then it.
Clearly, someone ascribes to the. I thought I would remember the word when I started talking, and I didn't. Let's just forget about that.
I probably don't even know the word. Let's move on.
Copenhagen. Someone clearly ascribes to the Copenhagen interpretation. That's something that you can look up. So, in 1910, a team of scientists set off to go to Antarctica. So there was a guy named George Murray Levick, fantastic name, a zoologist and a photographer. So he went to study penguins, specifically the Adelie penguin colony, and he was looking at what we were doing day to day. He's basically writing Happy Feet, but about real penguins instead of about cartoon ones. And in his notes, he noticed that some male penguins would get it on with each other. And in some cases, I think they would end up raising orphaned chicks together.
That is
gay penguin
so
dads.
Lovely. Oh my god.
The gay penguins, the icons that are the gay penguins.
I mean, there are gay penguins. Is it Edinburgh Zoo? There are gay penguins, or is it the zoo in America?
So New York Zoo had some gay penguins that were the inspiration for Tango Makes 3. I want to say that's the name of the book, but it's like a very famous and banned in a lot of places children's book about gay penguins.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, so it's the New York Zoo. That's great. I do love gay penguins.
I'm looking at a book about gay penguins and going, Ban it.
No.
Illegal. Not in my bookstore.
Illegal. They haven't even banned slavery in most of the world, but they've banned gay penguin books in some
Can't be
of
having
it.
a-
Well, okay, think
Ahead of the
about
curve.
it, Luke.
Doing.
What is more harmful, right? Slavery
Yeah.
can't turn people gay.
Think of the
We don't
gay
want
That's
children.
penguins.
true. That's very true.
Oh my lord. Yeah, so you know, I don't actually know. I don't actually know whether these ones raise chicks, but yeah. So he noticed gay penguins, but he was, and this is from the sort of article that I got it from. He was apparently concerned about the graphic content, and he only printed 100 copies of Sexual Habits of the Adelie Penguin to circulate privately. Okay,
That
now I've just
sounds,
made it sound like he's
yeah.
circulating gay penguin
Yeah.
porn. I want to make it
Yeah.
absolutely abundantly clear.
He's done Happy Feet fan fiction on
Created an underground
mature Happy Feet fan fiction.
penguin porn ring. What
is
the
a-
hell?
Would you guys like to read my penguin smut fic? Perhaps.
Yes, 100%.
Please. The new spin-off
the
show from
penguin
SCI Guys.
My friend wrote a porno
X-rated.
about penguin smut.
My friend wrote a penguin porno. And each week we'll read a new chapter.
Like, honestly, I don't think I can write a chapter of penguin smut and carry this
Oh my
podcast on
God.
at the same time. So clearly, we're gonna have to drop this one and just move straight into penguin
Yeah.
sex. That's
That makes sense.
the only logical
Priorities.
route.
Yeah, Happy Feet
Priorities.
is actually a penguin fetish film.
Oh, you don't want to see the porn
Oh.
version of Happy Feet, honestly.
No.
It's actually, yeah. Oh. Flappy feet.
Wow.
That doesn't make it. Slappy teats. Anyway,
Sorry. Too much.
Literally, just before we started this recording, did you not tell me to keep it clean?
Ah.
I can't. Honestly.
Only Corey can make it dirty.
I said to not swear. We're allowed to make as many innuendos
That's
as we
totally-
like.
In which case,
Ah.
carry on.
Wow. I'm going to take that as a challenge, Corey. I'm going to turn as much of this into an innuendo as possible.
You already do.
Yeah, you really do.
I do not.
I don't think
Yeah.
you do it intentionally, though.
I turn everything into a questioning of reality, not an innuendo.
You say something sincerely, and then we make it an innuendo.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, moving on. We've kind of observed homosexuality in lots and lots of animals. I mean, I think I read somewhere that all animals that we've studied exhibit homosexuality. Like, so in basically every animal that we've looked for it in, we've found it. I don't know whether that's true or not. I wouldn't take that as I would take that with a really big, a very large grain of salt. But yeah, no, we do see a lot of homosexuality in a lot of animals. So over 1,000 species, and that's just of the ones that we studied. Obviously, there's loads and loads more. You know, we found them in beetles, we found them in birds, loads of different types of
Yeah.
monkeys, loads of different types of animals. We found.
So the gay gene is interspecies, is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, how do you think it's? No, I'm not going to make that joke. Anyway, yes, the gay gene is potentially an interspecies gene.
Out of interest, is there any evidence to suggest? So, like, there's two possible explanations for that in my head. Either that there is like same-sex attraction in animals,
Mhm.
or that animals are just mating with anything, and some of the things they mate with happen to be same-sex. Is there anything to suggest one of those is the case?
Well, okay, so there are some animals, and this was not
Because
in
like my dog humps my leg. It does like
It looks like a
dogs
very
hump
sexy.
stuff,
It looks
right?
like a very sexy female dog. Your leg. What's going on, man? Stop
So
dressing
if
up
I
so
look
fine.
down, I see that I've been walking with a female
Dogs won't
dog
hump anything,
the whole
will they?
time.
I personally choose to believe that all animals are gay and they have just accidentally been having straight sex. Just like, oh, man, I'll do anything. You know what I mean?
Oops, I did it again.
Oh God, now I've got to raise a chick. Jesus.
Gosh darn it. Well, okay. Here's the thing: all animals being gay would mean that all animals would have to have very like two sexes, really, which just isn't necessarily true for all animals. I mean, they've got different. We saw last week that there's different kinds of sexual sort of expression in different animals. You know, obviously there are bees where there's one queen that just has all of the children and stuff. I say children; they're They're bees.
Children.
Babies.
Oh,
Man,
no.
shit.
That's
Yes.
But Luke, to answer your question, I don't think that all of the animals that are exhibiting homosexual tendencies are doing it because they can't tell the difference. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But
yeah, I'm just interested to know if there's intent there.
well, so I think
yeah.
in some animals it can be a mistake, and I do have a little anecdote about this. Apparently, I want to say
A personal
A
anecdote.
person is going to say, from experience.
No, not from
Ah,
personal
okay.
experience. I read this somewhere. Apparently,
Sure. In your
mooses-
diary.
Yes.
In your archive of our own account.
Like, this is delving too deep into fan fiction right now. I don't know. Rowan, I feel like
It
this
always
is your
will.
influence. You've come on
Yeah,
for one episode and
100%,
already
yes.
you've taken us down
You're
that route.
welcome.
Talking about smut.
Talking about smut, yeah. No, so I've actually heard stories apparently of meese. I want to say meese.
Meese. Let's go meese.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard stories of meese having sex with cars or trying to because their eyesight is very bad and they can't tell the difference.
And they mistake a car for another moose.
Mooses are
What?
very large.
That
And
is.
they clearly have very bad eyesight.
They're not metallic generally.
Well, that's why they try. It's not that they,
Succeed.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I don't think a moose can fit in an exhaust pipe.
In all
Let's be
Where do
fairness
they put
to those meese, there is a man who has sex with his car in the human species.
I've seen that
So,
video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait,
It's not explicit.
I was going to say
It's on my Strange Addiction, I think.
on your strange addiction. I'm sure
My
it is your strange addiction. Yes. No, I don't know whether that story's true or not. It could have just been a joke that I read at some point. But I have read that somewhere that apparently the moose's eyesight is quite bad and it ends up having sex with the wrong thing. So yeah, some animals could be having sex without knowing that they're having sex with a member of the same sex. And I mean, some animals don't exhibit very strong sexual dimorphism.
Mm.
So in the animals that do have sex in the way that sort of penetrative sex, yeah, they could be doing it completely by accident. But then the other one isn't.
They're in for a surprise,
yeah,
Yeah,
aren't
it's
they?
very clear that, for example, the example of a penguin is two penguins have teamed up with an awareness that both of them are unable to create an offspring, and so they're going to raise an offspring that's orphaned. That's like not only a lovely story, but also like clearly a decision on some level that's not accidental.
Again, I want to be clear. I'm not. I don't want to say that these penguins have raised little chicks. I have heard somewhere that apparently they gave penguins chicks to raise.
They have, Rowan.
They have.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Great, fantastic.
Definitely. And I think that it's one of those things where if we look at on an animal level, the idea of kind of biological imperatives or that this is all instinct, it does make sense that if you have potential offspring which cannot fend for itself, and then you have these couples or these kind of mated pairs who cannot produce for themselves, it makes complete sense for that to become part of a colony or a community of animals that would kind of
Completely.
fit our biological role in a way.
Yeah,
I suppose even if they are not genetically descended from that specific one, they still carry like 99% the same genes of penguin. And so it's still beneficial to most of the gene pool.
what's that 1%?
Well, I don't know. I don't know quite what the percentage is that goes into differentiation between different gene lines in a species. But like all of us share mostly the same genes. We're all human beings, and so it's always beneficial to most of our genes to look after each other.
Yeah, no, that absolutely.
rather than not.
So I think, do you know what? I'll bring it up now actually because you guys have really quite hit on it, and I think it's very interesting. So there's a sort of gay uncle theory. So how do I put it? They kind of
yes, I love
people have
this.
this theory that homosexuality kind of makes sense in that if you have a male, say that doesn't reproduce with females to produce their own offspring, but is there to protect, say, its siblings' offspring, then genes similar to its own are still being passed down, and those genes have a higher chance of making it to be passed down again. So basically, if you've got an uncle that's gay, you've kind of got two dads because your uncle's going to protect you to the point where you're then able to pass on your genes, and so genes similar to your uncle's are still going to get passed down. So that's kind of a theory that they've got for how that evolved.
So I know that they did studies or they've looked at stats where it's the more children that a woman has,
Yeah.
the more likely they are to be gay, which is kind of I guess there's like different explanations for that. One of them being kind of hormonal within the womb stuff, one of them being just statistically, I guess. But it is an interesting one.
Yeah, so
I also saw that there was a likelihood, a direct correlation. This was from a TED talk, so not a great source, but it was a TED talk about the genetic role in homosexuality, and it said that the amount of trauma experienced by the mother during the pregnancy is directly correlated with the likelihood of the child becoming or being gay, potentially because the mother is going to require more help to survive and doesn't want from a genetic standpoint, the child to be burdened with children because then he can help the mother. Does that make sense? Have you guys seen that anywhere?
It does make sense.
Yeah.
I've not heard it.
I've not heard that either.
I mean, what I'm
No.
saying, what you've said makes sense. I think I don't know if it necessarily makes sense biologically from a genetic perspective.
Sure.
But no, it's definitely an interesting theory.
It was a TED talk about the gay gene, so I don't know how accurate it is.
That's the thing. We'll get into the gay gene later because this is the thing. I've been talking about the gay gene, but have I found it? What's in my box? What's in my mystery box? We don't know till I open it.
Gotta tell us if you found it or not.
I'll tell you when I get to it.
On
to
my
it.
seat, Corey.
But that's the thing. So there's lots of different animals that exhibit homosexuality. We've spoken about penguins. I've actually got the names of them here. It's Roy and Silo, two chinstrap penguins from New York Central Park Zoo. And
Glad that I got that right earlier on in this recording, because that would have been really embarrassing. It was like totally different one.
That's the thing. I'd done this research quite a while ago, and I always like to read through it. Didn't get a chance to do it before that. But yeah, two penguins. So they do a lot of pair bonding behavior. So they entwine their necks. They preen each other. They do something called flipper flapping.
Flipper flapping.
Sounds like a euphemism. I don't know if it is.
Aw.
But then there are wild birds that have similar behavior. There's male ostriches, the only court male ostriches. There's apparently pairs of male flamingos that mate, build nests, and even raise foster chicks. So in flamingos in the wild, they'll foster chicks, which is really cute.
Oh, lovely.
It's so
Fun fact
cute.
about flamingos, not actually pink. They get it from the food that they eat.
May
We
I
talked about
share?
this on the live stream.
Yes.
May I share a fact?
Share a fact, Luke, please.
So this is from the National Library of Medicine, PubMed.gov. Both the neurohormonal theory of sexual orientation and previous research on humans and animals suggest that male homosexuality may arise from prenatal stress during the brain's sexual differentiation.
And so that makes sense. What I wanted to touch on what you said earlier. I'm not saying that stress on the mother while the sort of child is in the womb can't influence homosexuality. What I was saying more was that when people start to infer the why from
meaning.
that,
Yes,
Yeah.
no, I know, of
Yeah.
course. The why was just a way of pointing towards the idea.
yeah. So I
The
mean,
theory.
we can in science we can notice things. We can make observations, and those observations we can look at those and say, yeah, that makes sense. We can say, yeah, that's probably factual. But it's when we start to, especially with evolution, when we start to ascribe meaning and say,
Yeah.
yes, evolution decided to give bats wings so that they just started getting
just
them.
grew it.
Yeah,
Just grew
sure.
wings.
Evolution didn't decide
It helped
anything.
them.
It just did it. And I mean, obviously, one explanation for sort of prenatal stress increasing the chance of homosexuality could be that the child is then able to take care of the mother, but then it could also be that prenatal stress causes a hormone imbalance, which then influences homosexuality. There could be so many reasons, and plucking one out of sort of thin air isn't necessarily the best science route, but it does lead to some really, really interesting thoughts. So it is valuable, but it isn't necessarily always scientifically valid. And that's all I was saying earlier. But thank you for looking that up, Luke.
Of course.
So the team caught female Japanese macaques engaged in intimate acts, which, if observed in humans, would be in the X-rated category.
Ooh.
That is so weird.
They caught
That
some
is-
lesbian monkeys.
Oh dear.
Very
That is such a
specific.
coded way of saying we caught some
How
lesbian
dignified.
monkeys.
Oh, we got some lesbian monkeys getting it on. Yeah. So it goes on to say that the film Girl Power will be screened in the US this Saturday.
Amazing.
I can only imagine
No.
what that means.
Yeah, not this
Amazing.
Saturday, obviously. This is from an article that I read. But kind of odd that you're screening a lesbian monkey sex film on MSNBC. I don't know. You
That
can't
is
say
kinda
X-rated, then
weird.
you're
I
screening
don't
it.
know
What-
what the appeal is.
Yeah, I mean, if it was for people, would you screen it? I don't think so. So, think of the children. But yeah, they...
What's on at the cinema at the moment?
Lesbian monkey sex film.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So a National Geographic Ultimate Explorer correspondent, Maria Mayer, said the homosexual behavior that goes on is completely baffling and intriguing. You'd have thought that females that want to be mated, especially over their fertile period, would be seeking out males, but apparently they seek out females as well. And here's the thing: this is just in. Sex feels good.
No.
What?
Sex feels
Get
good.
out of town.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, sex feels good.
That's pretty wild.
I'll say it again.
That's a bold claim.
Once more.
Do you have? I hope you have a source in the description.
But is
That's
it
right.
Citation needed.
you
Disclaim.
you do say that, but aren't there only a limited amount of animals that have sex purely for pleasure's sake?
There are only few animals that do that. But like you see it in primates. You see it in a fair few primates. And the thing is, saying it's just for pleasure isn't necessarily true. It can also be for bonding. So I was going to bring up bonobos actually.
Classic bonobos.
Yeah.
God,
Bonobos, they're
those
the classic
randy
example.
It's
assholes.
how they make friends, isn't it?
It's how they make
Friends.
up
Little
after they've
more
had a
than
fight.
friends.
They've had a fight
Friends
and they
with
just...
benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You greet the new neighbors,
Dear me.
bonk 'em.
Yeah, you've got to have what is it? You've got to have the keys in the bowl or something like that, right? Is that another thing for swingers?
Yeah, that just seems like such an
Oh.
old reference. The idea of there's like phones don't exist, apps don't exist, nothing like that. It's like, oh, come on, put your keys in, everyone.
Oh dear.
Come
So the
on.
monkeys are doing. These basically bonobos. They're an African ape. I say they're monkeys. They're an African ape. They're quite closely related to humans, and they are very gay. So apparently, 75% of bonobo sex is non-reproductive, and that nearly all bonobos are bisexual. Now that doesn't mean that 75% of bonobo sex is gay sex. It just means that they don't use it for reproduction. So they'll fellate each other.
Oh dear.
Yes, they
Keep
will
this
fellate each
PG,
other
please.
for not just for gratification, but also as a bonding experience, as a way to say thank you or sorry.
Who
know.
doesn't?
Thank you.
Who doesn't?
Wow, that's
Thank you
very
for-
true.
Thank you for picking the fleas off my back. I will now fillet you as thank you.
Wow. Wow.
Damn.
I mean, you make a joke, but yeah, and a lot of other
Imagine
animals.
that when your Deliveroo driver delivers your food.
Okay, hold on.
Thank
Let me
you
get
for
that
delivering
one.
my food.
That used to be it, but obviously
Time
now
for your
we've got to
tip.
stay 6 feet away from each other, so it's very difficult to do
Oh.
at this point, really.
I've just been using a very long tube to like get the same sort of like.
Like a straw.
Powerful lungs. Damn.
It's a big straw.
Well, it's a bit wider than a straw jam. I don't know what you're working with, but let's be real here.
Why is it a big straw?
Even a big straw is not very big, James. Big straw is like what you get with a milkshake. That's a big straw.
So a
Well, you do
pint.
get a kind of milkshake with it, don't you? It's just not quite. As
Sorry.
Christ.
No.
Oh,
More of
no.
a syrup, isn't it?
so, dear me.
So the bonobos,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, but
What
that-
about those guys, eh?
I don't
They're
think
all-
we can
they're
get
all
away from
bisexual.
these sexual innuendos by going back to the
That's
bonobos.
true.
They are
No, I don't
very,
think that's fair.
they're very graphic animals. I will talk a little bit about some other animals that have sex. Pretty much all animals have sex. I won't say all of them do, but pretty much all of them do. Male dolphins go through temporary gayness. Apparently,
Temporary
yeah. So that they
Wow.
have.
They tried it in college, don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. Quite
their
literally,
gay
they
phase.
do. So these dolphin calves, they have sort of temporary sexual partnerships with other dolphin men. I said dolphin men, male dolphins. Dolphin
Pretty
men
I
is
don't
fucked
going to
want to
up
imagine
rise.
dolphin then.
Look, go back and listen to our
Wow.
pilot
Yeah.
episode. That's how you get a dolphin man. That's a joke
on
that only a few people
patreon.com.
get. Yeah.
SCI Guys.
Patreon.com/SCI Guys.
Go listen.
Go listen. So gay dolphins are a thing that exists, but only temporarily, usually. So they go through a short period of being gay in college, and then that teaches them how to form lifelong bonds, which is
With other male dolphins?
with female dolphins.
Ah,
Otherwise,
Wow.
Oh, so
there wouldn't
they-
be very
it's
It's
many.
like when you
The men
practice
teach each
kissing
other.
with your friend.
I didn't. No,
I didn't do that.
no, I didn't do that at
Sure.
all.
Just all these
Sure.
dolphins
No.
like spinning a bottle on
Yeah.
the bottom of the ocean, like, oh, shall
Spin
we?
the bottlenose.
Spin the bottle.
Wow. I just really like the idea that they had to have studied these dolphins through their whole lives to realize that that's like a thing that most of them go through. The idea of just like, oh my god, I can't believe our little dolphin babies get. Oh, maybe he's not.
Huh?
Oh, okay. Oh, we're learning so much about Kevin, aren't we?
Oh.
Weirdly stalking him in the ocean.
I thought he was
That's so
gay, but he's
true.
not.
Because even if you don't study them right the way through, you're like, okay, this is Kevin. Oh, he's gay. Okay, you come back later, and you're like, what happened to Larry?
Kevin's sleeping with a girl.
Oh God, yeah, he's with a
Damn.
girl now. But I've got a little story about a dolphin that I loathe to tell, but also love to tell. Now, I was swimming with dolphins once, and I was with a large group of people. We were in the sort of dolphin,
Oh, not
Tank?
this. Not this.
I suppose. Yes, it's this story.
Everyone has this story because the dolphins really do like it.
I really hope that not everyone has this story. No, this is not the story you think. So the
Ah.
dolphin was lying on its back, getting a nice belly rub from everyone. It was lovely. It was great. Good time. This like sort of 6-year-old kid or so was next to me. Was next to me in the dolphin tank, and while the dolphin was on its back getting lovely belly rubs, said, "Mummy, I found its blowhole."
Oh dear.
Definitely didn't find its blowhole.
Oh wow!
Well, interestingly, there's a documentary on Netflix about a man who fell in love with a dolphin, and had like a really intimate
Oh god!
sexual relationship with a dolphin. This is a real show on Netflix. He talks about it. He's interviewed, and he has this story where he's like rubbing this female dolphin's belly, and she like moves up so that he's not rubbing the belly anymore. So like maybe your friend in
Horny
the dolphin tank, maybe the dolphin moved there.
This wasn't
'Cause
my
they seem-
friend. This was some random kid.
Okay, well,
I
maybe
don't
this person
associate.
like maybe the dolphin like actually moved there rather than the kid finding the yes.
Well, in that case,
Dolphin
that
was
dolphin
like-
deserves to be locked up because
Dolphin was like, just a
Sure,
little
I
lad.
didn't say that
As a
it doesn't.
child.
But yeah, it's a really interesting documentary about this man who has like an intimate relationship with a dolphin.
a really interesting documentary is not something you say about dolphin sex.
It's interesting. I didn't say it's good or right.
Look,
Just
I'm not
it's
saying that being a
interesting.
furry is good or right. It's just interesting. Okay, it's
Well,
interesting.
it is interesting. I think it's very interesting.
No, it
being
is very
furry.
interesting. Yeah, perhaps
I
we'll
think
do
it's
an
very
episode on it.
interesting. I'd love to know how that all works.
We had
Dolphin
a.
sex.
No, Corey, stop! don't
He
don't
knows
do
how
this.
that works.
I'd love to know. That's a new SCI GUYS spin-off show.
We had I'm going to do another. This anecdote is definitely scientific in that it was a science teacher who told us. But she did the classic thing of like how when you go and swim with dolphins, sometimes the dolphins get a little bit too randy and trying. And she kind of meant it in a really scientific way. But I think a lot of the students who heard about it, because she was just telling like it was in our senior school, but we were probably about 12, were just like, oh my god, what the fuck? Because like we'd never heard that before. And then about a year afterwards, we had a cover teacher and we referenced this teacher who used to work here. And someone mentioned dolphins and everyone was giggling. And the teacher's like, what are you all laughing about? And this one girl from the back just pipes up, oh, she got put under pressure by a dolphin. And I was like, what? What an interesting way of saying that a dolphin just started like trying to mess with her. Just like the dolphin put her under a lot of pressure. Just imagine this dolphin like, if you
Under a
really
lot
loved
of
me,
pressure.
you used to stay inside the pool.
Is this the Me Too movement with dolphins now? Is that
Yeah,
the
you
next
know.
target? Really?
You've got to.
Well, PC gone mad. That's what I think, isn't it? No, honestly, it is off. The thing is, that through the course of this podcast, I've actually found out that dolphins seem to be very forward with their sexual appetites when it comes to humans.
Oh, they tell you what they want.
Well, yeah,
They
they
know
really
what they want.
They know what they want. Yeah. And we've mentioned it already, but head over to patreon.com, listen to our pilot episode. It's the first bonus one. We talk about a woman who had a love affair with a dolphin. and kind of masqueraded it as a science project.
Isn't it literally called Sex with a Dolphin or something?
Yeah, Sex with a Dolphin. That's what it's literally what it's called.
Wow.
And she
Creative
does
naming.
Giving the people what they want.
What should we call this episode of SCI Guys, guys?
Look, I like talking about my interests, and if my interests are dolphin sex, then so be it. What's wrong with that?
Can't help what you like, Corey.
You can't help what you like. Now, why don't we talk about the
Now,
history?
speaking of homosexuals,
Did you just compare people who have sex with dolphins to homosexuals?
listen,
I will.
it's not natural, except it definitely is because the dolphins do it. That's the new argument.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think that word natural is run its
Natural
course.
doesn't exist.
Doesn't mean
Everything's
anything.
natural.
What is
We are nature.
natural? Is a
Shut
very
up.
natural
Not
is
you,
one of
Rowan.
those. It's one of those words that's very. What's it called? It's very arrogant of humans to create the word natural.
Sure.
Yeah.
We
And
are
then
natural.
and then exclude ourselves.
Literally
from it.
nothing we do is natural. Nothing at all. Or everything.
Exactly. Either if everything we do is natural, or nothing we do is natural. But if nothing we do is natural, if natural just means humans do it, then that's a very silly line to draw. Just say it's a human thing, you know?
Being gay is not right. Anyway, I'm going to go to Tesco and then Weatherspoons where I will drink some beer where we've manipulated yeast into turning fruit into a nice tasty drink for me.
Yeah, but like
What?
like literally, people say that, and like they're like, oh yes,
Time to take my plastic recycling out.
if you even if you strip it right back and you decide, oh, I don't go to Tesco, I grow all my own food. All of the food that we've grown isn't fucking natural. It's
Yeah.
like it's
modified,
years
isn't
and
it?
years of genetically altered stuff. That's have you seen wild strawberries? Look nothing like
they're tiny, aren't they?
tiny. Look nothing like actual strawberries. Look at the original version of corn before we messed with it.
It used to be 2 centimeters. 2
Tiny.
centimeters.
I wouldn't buy them.
No. only the big boy corn. 6 inches of
glad
corn at
they're
least.
then
That's
bigger.
it. But back to homosexuality and
Bigger is
science.
We've gotten a bit off track again.
But I do think that the natural thing is interesting because I imagine you're maybe going to get onto this in a minute anyway. But I do think that a lot of people's jumping onto the idea of animals being gay, at least when I was a teenager, was because there was so many conversations about homosexuality being unnatural, and so the idea was that you were kind of trying to be like, no, look, it isn't here,
It is
because
in
that kind of
nature.
justified you having equal
Yeah.
rights by being like, it's totally natural. But in the same way, that's often taken the opposite way, in that, like, if you are a regime which is very anti-homosexuality, actually finding a gay gene is very useful to you in terms of eugenics. So you have these
Right.
kind of two weird things where you're trying to prove there's a gay gene because you want to say it's not just a thing that we decide when we're older. Look, it's biological. It's as normal as having blue eyes. But then on the other side of things, it's very problematic because it ends up with a kind of this could be bred out of society
we can
sort
cure
of
it.
potential. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if being gay was a genetic in the sense that you could only pass it down if it was like, you know, if you could only pass it down if you were gay, then it would have been bred out. Very
quite
quick.
a while
It's
ago.
it's gonna be very hard to breed out being gay, because it's not just the gays you got to stop from breeding. They do that on their own. It's everyone else.
All of the straight people.
Yeah, you got to stop the straights from. And the thing is, the straights aren't going to want to not breed. You know, no matter.
That's what they do best.
It's their MO. That's what they do.
That's their thing, bro. That's what they're
That's
for.
all they got going for them.
That's the only reason that the gays haven't risen up and just taken them all out. That's it.
We require straight
just because they
people to
keep
thrive.
making more gay people. The
Look,
straight
yeah.
people really giving us what we want.
Look, I can see a future, the Gaytrix, if you will, very similar to the Matrix. Instead of machines putting humans in, it's the gays putting the straights in, and the straights live in a world and they just produce gay babies. And that's it. The Gaytrix.
There we go.
Just put them in a computer,
Heard it here
computer
first.
program. What do the men get? The men get pool. Simulated pool. 24/7. That's what the straight men get.
That's what they love. They love knocking their
If
wood
I know
against those
anything about
balls. Oh,
straight
no,
men.
no.
Darts or pool, one of the two.
Yes.
Both very phallic games as well.
Yes.
Actually, Rowan, to what you said, I think it is interesting that the sort of natural argument could go either way. I think realistically, it just comes down to, if you hate gay people, you're gonna find any reason to hate gay people. You know?
Very true.
Really are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very true.
You'll figure it out. You'll figure out a way. Life finds a way.
Almost like bigotry has no actual reason in reality.
try.
It's just like you come up with the story after you've got the
Almost.
bigotry. That's
Wow.
crazy. Someone
Yeah.
should Someone should talk about that.
Oh, I hope someone does at some point. It's a very good idea that you just come up with
Yeah.
entirely of your own accord.
Oh my gosh. So
You could thank me later.
revolutionary.
So, history of homosexuality in science. Rowan, I don't know if you know anything about this. I feel like there's one key point that I feel like I've heard you say quite a bit, but maybe I'm making it up. I don't
Always
know.
banging on about it.
You're always banging on about it. You are, aren't you? So there were psychologists in the 19th and 20th centuries who classified homosexuality as. Does anyone want to hazard a
Mental
guess?
disorder.
A mental illness? Yeah, they did.
There we
Yeah.
go.
Which is
We're
interesting
always
though,
gonna go
because
there.
there are higher rates of mental illness in gay people, probably because of all the
Well, the
homophobia.
homophobia, yeah.
Yeah,
That'll do it.
That's it.
Why are the gays so depressed?
Oh, I hate them. I hate them.
Let's just depress them more.
Tricky one.
Yeah, so the 19th and 20th centuries, we classified being gay as a mental illness, which take from it what you will. So there's a 19th century psychologist, Richard von Krafft-Ebing, whose Psychopathia Sexualis from 1886 included masturbation, sadomasochism, and lust murder in its list of
Lust
sexual perversions. And so it like coming from sort of heredity. So basically what he was saying was all of these things are genetic. Sadomasochism, masturbation, all of these evil sexual deviancies are
Can
all
you
passed
define
down.
lust murder? What is lust murder?
I think it speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Does it?
Lust murder. They're two very simple words, aren't they?
Just put them together and what
Just
do
put
you
them
got?
together. What do they mean?
Like I'll leave you to figure that one out
Okay.
on your own.
Give me 20 minutes.
What, to knock one out? I don't
20
think that's
minutes
appropriate. So yeah, funnily enough, this man thought that sexual perversions were passed down through sex, which makes some sort of sense. If it's hereditary, you got to have sex to pass it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, you looked confused there. I thought I'd have to
I
explain.
thought he meant like an STI or something.
I mean,
It's like,
I guess babies are really the worst STI, aren't they?
yeah,
You
they
can't-
are. They are.
You can't get rid of those.
They are. They
That's so true.
have them for
So
at least
wise.
18 years.
So, Sigmund Freud, I'm sure words came out there. Sigmund Freud, who I'm sure we all have heard of, had a few ideas. He
course he
character. He had a few.
He had a
He
few.
always does.
that Freud,
That's Sigmund.
Siggy,
Good old Sig. I was going to say Sig.
Siggy, yeah. So he characterized it as a result of conflicts of psychosexual development. Basically, he also said that it was part of identifying with the parent of the opposite sex. So if you apparently sort of identifying with, say, if you're a man, identifying with your mother,
Right.
could lead to being a gay,
Could
catching the
do.
gayness. Yeah.
Off your mother.
Well, not from her directly.
Just.
I mean, like if it's genetic, then yes, I guess you do
Yeah.
catch it from your mother. But no, like as in Freud had a lot of interesting sort of
Mom,
psychological.
you've given me the gay.
Yes, your mother gave you the gay, so it's her fault. But yeah, he basically thought that sort of over-identification with the parent of the opposite sex could end up turning you into a gay. I guess it's the idea of like being a mama's boy means that you're gonna be a little gay, just a little bit.
And that's why Freud is not respected by any psychologists.
So there were lots of stereotypes around homosexuality, and obviously this is the issue. These sort of things influence science, which isn't necessarily the best. So obviously those stereotypes kind of affected studies into this. People thought that lesbians were masculine and aggressive, whereas gay men were effeminate and weak. Obviously those things are not true at all.
All the time.
Ah, no, stop it. You're so aggressive.
Arr.
That was, I think, the cutest thing I've seen today. Look, that was second.
Oh, he shot back up to the top.
Hey!
Broken the scale. So then we get on to Alfred Kinsey, who, oh God, we love a little
the
bit of
Kinsey
Kinsey.
scale.
The Kinsey
Love it.
scale. So the Kinsey report of 1948 found that 30% of
remember
adult American
this.
males among his subjects had engaged in some homosexual
the king?
activity. Sorry?
Was he the king?
Who's the king?
My loyal subjects, it is time to find out which of you are gay. Answer my questionnaire.
Oh my god.
Some of you will be gay.
Some of you will be me.
I love the idea of a king finding stuff out about his population just by, guys, please fill out the questionnaire. No census, nothing like that. Just questionnaire.
Yeah.
Have you been a gay?
Tick yes or no.
Yes or no?
Yeah, so he, good Lord. Kinsey's subjects, his research subjects, he found that 30% of the American males had engaged in some homosexual activity, and that 10% of them reported that their sexual practice had been exclusively homosexual for a period of at least 3 years between the ages of 16 and 55. And then about half as many women in the study reported predominantly homosexual activity. So this episode is about the gay gene. I've been talking about the gay gene. I've told you I might have it in my little box, my little mystery box. Yes, that's me, J.J. Abrams.
Have we found it?
Have I found the gay gene?
Have you found it?
No.
The gay gene does not exist.
Hang on. What? Categorically?
This changes
Well,
everything.
okay, so we've done. Okay, let me get into this. So the gay gene, the idea of that kind of came around in 1997, I believe. 1997. Sorry, 1993. So the idea of the gay gene came around in 1993 when scientists noted a correlation between a genetic marker XQ28 and gay male sexuality. Now this is another thing. We usually only study men in this because we're very man-centric. We study gay males. We tend not to study gay females.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously things are very skewed in that sense. So the results of that original study weren't replicated, and the biological reality is basically kind of hypothetical. And then, but obviously that's one of those things where the gay gene kind of took off, and people are searching for the gay gene. We're looking for it, and in the public consciousness, the idea of a gay gene just doesn't really match up with the science. So if there was a gay gene, I am sure we probably would have found it by now. But the reality is that genetics are much more complex than, this is the gene for being gay, just like this is the gene for being tall. There are lots of different genetic factors that can add up to being tall, but then also a lot of environmental factors that add up to being tall. So being gay could be the same. It could be a case of having a lot of biological factors, a lot of genetic factors that can make you more inclined towards being gay, and then environmental factors, and that could even be environmental factors in the womb. So differences of hormones could then influence whether you end up being straight, gay, bisexual, anything. And trying to ascribe that to just one gene doesn't necessarily make sense given the information that we've got. And I think a really key point about this whole thing is the fact that we think about being gay as I used an analogy recently over the past few weeks of we think of being gay as sort of the disease, whereas realistically it's just a symptom. There is what I mean by
disease
symptom.
of life.
Something worse.
I slightly zoned out, and I came back to Corey saying we think of being gay as a disease, and I was like, where have I been? That's not what.
Do you not?
Well, no, I mean,
No.
What I mean by that is that
Yeah.
What I mean by that is that we think that being gay is the outcome. So we're looking for one genetic factor that sort of leads to being gay. We're looking at all these sort of epigenetic factors, these social factors that lead to one being gay, as though being gay is the one thing in and of itself. When in reality, it's the same as the trans episode last week. If we change our sort of view of being gay from being like the one outcome to actually just being a symptom that can be caused by a number of different things. Like you don't get a fever and think, well, oh boy, that means that I've got a cold. A fever could be anything. It's just a symptom that points to something else. And in the same sense, being gay could just could be sort of a collection of a lot of different things that we just class as being gay. So there could be lots of different reasons for being gay. There could be lots of different genetic factors, lots of different sort of environmental factors that lead to a person defining themselves as gay or having homosexual sort of tendencies or attractions. And I think it's a much better way of looking at it. And it kind of gets you out of the mindset of there being one gay gene that turns people gay, because the sort of gay experience isn't the same amongst every single individual person.
Yeah.
I just think we should sort of change our mindset when it comes to that, really.
I generally think that there are probably a lot of contributing factors, and that they are probably different and shift for different people, rather than it just being one. Completely agree with that. I mean, I know that there were. I had like horrendous homophobia at my school. Was one of the like 2 people who were out while they were at school in a group of friends who all ended up being gay, as is the way it is.
How does that? They always fight. How does that happen?
So here's what happens. I think because I think one girl came out before me in the group. I came out. A few other people came out, and a lot of them came out as bi. And I think it's not that we were the only queer people in the school. It was that we were in a friendship group in which we had established that we were a safe space for people to express that and to come to terms with that within themselves. And so there were other girls who were in the sort of very homophobic popular group who, if you talk to them on their own, would kind of be like, oh yeah, like of course I've fancied girls before, but I'm not gay, like I'm straight, like it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And I think it is because they're in an environment where actually they are able to compartmentalize because they are attracted to men and say, well, that's different. And I think it joins in with the idea of like heteronormativity and compare and all this kind of stuff, that actually it's not necessarily that all of the gays found each other, it's that the people who found each other in a safe space felt more able to explore their identity and to openly identify in that way. And so it kind of, because it is a phenomenon that happens an interesting amount, which you would not expect looking at mainstream media, because there are so many, the one gay character in this group of straight characters.
Every Netflix show.
And I'm like, that's not how that works. We don't really tend to, like, I think I've got
They
like
come in
one
packs.
gay,
We
but one
unionize.
straight friend in my entire life. I'm like, that's not how that works. But it is because you kind of, if you know that group is going to be accepting of you, then you're more likely to think, oh, actually, yeah, I feel
You can
this
explore
thing
yourself.
that I think I can identify in that way as well as feeling in that way.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. So just to explain one thing you said, you've mentioned compet there for anyone that doesn't know what that is.
Oh, yeah.
That's compulsory heterosexuality, right?
Yeah.
Which basically is just the kind of phenomenon of heterosexuality being the norm to the point that everyone is assumed to be heterosexual, and I think and specifically sort of women have to be attracted to men, which is wild.
Yeah.
No one should be attracted to men. Disgusting.
Awful people.
No, disgusting. Men are disgusting. Not being. Oh no, I'm homophobic now. But yeah, I think it's actually interesting that I've noticed this. So I look back at school, and so many. I really love it. So many kids from school are coming out as trans or as gay or bi, and it's fantastic to see that. Just sort of on Facebook, scrolling through, and then suddenly this kid that you knew from school has got the bravery to come out, and that's really fantastic. And I think that as the world is becoming more accepting and more open, we're probably going to see more and more people identify as gay, identify as bi, because
As the safe spaces get bigger,
Yeah.
there's more of them.
exactly. And if you look through history, there are so many people that were gay or bisexual. And in fact, even in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, I think it was a very normal thing for people to be gay. But obviously, over time, that's kind of changed. I think that humans as a species, being gay or being bi is fairly common to be honest. And we've just kind of just ignored it because it's very easy to be a little bit bi and just stick to being straight, decide to be straight. I mean, think about all the gay stuff that teenage boys do, you know?
Oh, teenage boys are so gay.
No one is more obsessed with penises than teenage boys. And that can't be that can't
The straight boys at school.
Come on. Exactly. Yeah, so I think there really is something there about the fact that sort of being a more accepting society will show more sort of homosexual tendencies, one could say.
Well, it has already, I think. I know that there's been a lot of studies into the difference between, obviously, the sort of the different generations is kind of socially imposed on, but looking at like Gen Z, a lot more of them are likely to identify as basically stuff that isn't straight. And some of them to feel more able to say, I don't think I'm straight, not necessarily I am bi or I am gay, but I'm not gonna just assume because everyone like says I have to be heterosexual that's what it is. I don't know what I am, but it's just this isn't what I feel like. And so I think that kind of acceptance of questioning or exploration is really healthy, and I'm really excited that that's something that's becoming more of an okay thing to do, to kind of feel like you can identify as one thing and then actually realize that you're something else, or kind of say, actually, I'm not going to put a label on myself. I'm just going to be trying to work myself out and know what parts of what I'm thinking are things that I've been told I should think, or I have to think, or I have to like, and what is naturally what I actually feel. So I'm very excited for the youths, for the youngsters, kind of coming up now.
I can't wait for them to kill coming out. I can't wait till that's just not
a thing.
coming out is ridiculous and stupid and awful, and it shouldn't exist. And okay, there are a lot of people that have got very heartwarming and very touching coming out stories, and I would not want to take that away from them. But Gen Z, stop coming out. Stop it.
Stop.
If you just decide to never do it and just you do you, no one will ever need to come out again.
I hated the idea of it even in high school, that I just usually didn't come out. I'd let people figure it out.
Yeah.
And then wait till they asked me, and then I'd be honest. I'd be like, yeah.
It makes it so much more of a, obviously people can find acceptance and stuff, but it makes it so much more of a thing, you know? I think we're getting close to a point where coming out, we can just decide that it doesn't need to happen anymore. You just don't assume that someone's straight until, in fact, I actually find myself assuming that most of the new people that I meet aren't straight. And I tend to be right, to be honest.
They've got to prove their heterosexuality to you.
Like, there's also those people that are like, oh, I couldn't tell you were gay. It's like, you don't seem like a gay.
Well,
it's like the opposite of that.
I'm sorry, Barbara. You don't seem to be banging my boyfriend. What
is stealth gay, to be honest?
I had that a lot in school. I had a lot of girls
me too.
who would literally be like, but you have long hair. And at the time, because obviously it was pre-gay marriage being legal. It was pre a lot of stuff being legal. It was a lot of people being like, but don't you want to get married? Don't you want to? And I'm like, yeah, I do. That's why I'm fucking going on marches, you idiot.
Come on.
Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
I will say, as a counterpoint to your coming out argument, I do think that what I don't want to happen is the sort of, oh, I don't see colour version of like, everyone's the same. Like, I do think that if coming out was not a thing that was like a big deal, it was like, and now it is me, and this is what the stamp I'm putting on it forever. But it was just a thing of being like, oh, I feel comfortable telling people, I think I figured something out about myself. And that then now attaches me to this really interesting history that I have, this really interesting community that I can be a part of, these interesting, like, that to me is not necessarily a negative thing. I think that the difficulty is right now we live in a society where it's like it has a lot of connotations of fear and of difficulty. And so I think I don't necessarily want it to get to a place where people don't have to come out. I want it to get to a place where coming out is not any of those things. Yeah, it's just like and it doesn't have to be the one time that you do it. That it's like, I have decided my sexuality now. It can just be a thing of like, hey guys, so I fancy a boy. I don't know what that means, but like that's kind of fun, right? Like,
doesn't
it's not
coming out imply heteronormativity?
Not necessarily, because you could come out as straight. You could be like, hey, I think I've figured out my sexuality. I think I've figured out something about myself. But I think that, I don't think we'll get to a point in which heteronormativity has ever really, truly gone, to be honest, unfortunately. And I think it's around to stay, you know? That's just how it works. But yeah, because I do think that I wouldn't want anyone to feel like their identity, that they couldn't feel like their identity was important, or they couldn't feel like they wanted to start to learn about the history of it or things like that just because it's accepted. Because I think that you can have both. You can have all sexualities being accepted, and you can also be like, fuck, the Stonewall riots were a really interesting part of history, and that is like a history that I come from in a way.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't disagree with you on that. I think when I say kill coming out, I don't mean I don't
lost murder.
I don't mean sort of never. No one talks about it. I don't see color. I think I mean more along the lines of coming out should be a case of let's say you've kind of gotten into Buddhism and you think, I think I'm a Buddhist now. I think that it should be more along the lines of like or like, hey, I've just gotten really into Thai food recently, and I think I'm just super into it. Like it should be something.
I'm going to try dating guys for a bit. See if it's like
it should be a thing where what I don't like about coming out is that when you do it, it becomes people's view of you is then sort of tainted or tinted. It shifts to this view of you're no longer the person that you are. You are now the gay person that you are. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's just because you live in a heteronormative world, and they're having to reconceptualize of you, and that is the building block upon which them having to build a new model of you in their head has begun.
The thing is, they shouldn't.
I
But they
agree.
don't need.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm saying that they shouldn't need to build a new model of you because fundamentally, their model of you has not changed. They just need to swap out. Really, they just need to kind of swap out
I
the
agree
model
with
that
you.
they see you with.
I agree with you, but they. Oh right, yeah. Okay, fair enough. I agree with you. I just mean that the way they're building models has been handed to them by the parents and the world they grew up in. It's not necessarily something that they decided.
Yeah. So that when I say kill coming out, I mean the sort of idea of coming out as a big event that you're forced to do.
It's almost like an admission of something wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting though is that there are exceptions, but in general, the LGBT identities are an identity that you have to choose to actively come out as.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, when people see me, they're going to be like, a woman. That is a thing. You are a woman. I know that about you and that part of your identity. You are white. I know that about you and part of your identity. And I think that with LGBT stuff, there is such a lot of stigma behind it that it's a really difficult one to try and work out comparisons for, because for the most part, there will be occasionally people who have to do that. So, for example, if you are like white passing, you're a white passing person of color, you may have to make the decision as to whether or not you say to people, hey, so actually you've made an assumption about me. But in general, this is kind of the identity that has to figure that out. And I think it is a tricky one because it has so many connotations of like being tainted by this thing or like negativity. So it's not necessarily a thing where you're just like, oh yeah, I am left-handed. So, oh yeah, you're like, you didn't notice before, but I am. Because
I do hate left-handed people, though. I'm not joking.
I mean, obviously.
No. You think I'm not joking. I genuinely, no, I know. I'm looking at you. I genuinely dislike left-handed people.
I'm not left-handed.
Oh, thank God.
Not left-handed. No way. You wouldn't catch me. That was so annoying because I'd always end up sitting next to them at school, and you'd like bump elbows with them.
Yeah, they're the
You're
worst.
like, absolutely not.
Like, I genuinely am prejudiced
guys,
against left-handed people.
guys,
Rowan, please continue.
It's all it's all coming out. But yeah, so it is an interesting one because it is that thing of it shouldn't matter that you would have to come out as a thing, but not just heteronormativity, but the negative associations with it, that it does feel like an admission of something rather than just an informing someone of something. It feels like there's potential negative emotions there as well.
Yeah. I think on top of the sort of negative, not even just the negative emotions, I think, like I said, the sort of not just tainted, but tinted, in that no longer will they view you through the lens of any normal person. You are now a gay sort of thing, because obviously with heteronormativity, being straight is the normal. So now they'll look at you and you are now no longer normal. It's one of those things where so I come from quite a small sort of town, and the way that you describe someone, you've always got a way of describing someone, right? So if I say, oh, have you met Lee? And they're like, oh, which Lee? And I'm like, oh yeah, Big Lee. If you come out as gay, Big Lee is no longer Big Lee. Big Lee is now Gay Lee.
Gay Lee.
Because that's his thing.
Or it's Big Gay Lee. Maybe.
Well, that's only if there's another Lee. If there's another Gay Lee, then he's Big Gay Lee. Yeah. Or it's a case of like, oh, do you know Lee? Yeah, Lee's gay, and I'm like, well, why is that the most relevant information to me? It's just when I say kill coming out, I don't want to take away people's sort of pride in their identities or being able to talk about those identities, or even have those identities be something that are important and defines them from other people. I just mean the idea of coming out as like an admission of something that needs to go. And one way to do that is to just chill on it and make coming out not a big deal. I'm not saying don't tell anyone who you are. Just it doesn't need to be something that that everyone needs to know all the time. And if you feel like you do need to do that, then go ahead and do that. I'm just saying don't feel obligated to do that, because it's kind of almost become this compulsory thing where people feel that they need to announce it to be valid as their identity, which just isn't the case. But yeah,
I'm going to take out like an advert in the newspaper. Like you've got the births, the deaths, the marriages. And I'm like, also, just so everyone knows, our daughter has decided she is a homosexual.
Fantastic.
Like a debutante. Like they all come out. Just like, we're introducing.
Pay attention.
I am now re-announcing myself as gay. You may have known me before, but you didn't know me truly. It's like, Mammy, I'm a gay man now. Like it's the Catherine Tate show. So yeah, like I said, the gay gene doesn't really exist. We did a study recently in sort of 2019 that kind of it was a massive epigenetic study. We found that there are some genes that are shared amongst gay people, but it doesn't account for all homosexuality. I think it's about 25%. It really 8 to 25% of the variation in sexual behavior, genetics can really explain. So there are a lot of other factors there. One of those being epigenetics, which is kind of the environment changing the expression of your genes. Obviously, every single cell in your body has the same genetic code, but not every single cell is exactly the same. And that's basically just because some genes are switched on and switched off. So the gay gene, there could be genes that influence gayness. There could also be genes that are switched on and switched off that then influence being gay. And then there could also be environmental factors, hormonal things in the womb, other things of those nature that could then result in someone having the sort of gay phenotype.
And Corey, you're forgetting, as we all know, they're putting things in the water that are turning the friggin' frogs gay.
Yes,
They are doing that.
they are putting things in the
Mr.
water
Alex told me.
that are turning the frickin' frogs gay. Well, look, we've spoken about that in other episodes. So if you want to know exactly what that means, you can head to one of our previous episodes. Or, hey, why not head over to patreon.com/SCI Guys and listen to all those lovely bonus episodes we've got, and why not listen to the live episodes while you're at it?
Yeah, the live streams and the bonus
That's a
episodes, there's
great
so much on there
idea.
now.
There's so much on there. But I think that's all for today, guys, is it not?
Yes.
That's all for today.
Is anything you want to plug?
If you do listen to podcasts, which evidence suggests that you do, and are interested in the gays, evidence suggests that you are, scientific evidence. I have a gay podcast called Queer Movie Podcast with Jazza. We talk about a different genre of queer cinema every episode and pick a kind of classic from the genre and discuss it, and it's a good time.
Two lovely people and a lovely podcast that you should definitely
Thank you.
go ahead and
Nice.
listen to. Thank you for listening. You can find the full references for this episode in the description. Subscribe for new episodes every Monday, and why not leave us a nice wee review? You can support the pod at patreon.com/SCI Guys, or find and contact us at SCI Guys Pod on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Or why not send us an email at sciguyspod@gmail.com.
That's sciguyspod@gmail.com.
Sci Guys, bye.
At gmail.com. I'm not Corey everywhere.
I'm Jampkin everywhere.
I'm Luke Cupforth everywhere.
Oh, hi, I'm Rowan.
No, what's your Twitter
What's
name,
your
Rowan?
Twitter? Sorry.
I'm
Rowan
at
would be
Hey
impressive.
Rowan Ellis.
And Rowan is Hey Rowan Ellis everywhere, I assume. Find out for yourself. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.